This is the agenda you should be using.
The 10-1 agenda.
Okay, we're going to start.
Right.
Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for October 1st, 2014. We're going to tonight start our meeting. It's about 3 minutes after 6. We're going to go until fairly close to 7 o'clock, at which point the advisory committee will come and start their meeting. And if there's more business to attend to after their meeting, we will continue in session and conclude after the advisory meeting. Town Administrator David Williams to read the agenda, please.
The first thing we'll do is vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. We have 3 items that I recommend adding, which is consider approve the November 2014 election ballot, consider approve MPO delegate and proclamation for Nancy Lavash, and then a public comment period, and then consideration of 2 one-day liquor licenses, both at the Sherborn Community Center, and then discussion of the fall special town meeting warrant articles. And then under routine business, town administrator is going to bring out the latest appointments for consideration, and then set the next meeting, which is expected to be an hour before the town meeting, special town meeting on October 15th. Look at upcoming meeting topics, approval of minutes. There's payroll warrant to approve, and then break, and then have the advisory hearing.
Okay, and I would like to propose that we reverse the 2 items that you have set for 6:15, David, so that we talk about the fall special town meeting articles before we talk about the one-day liquor licenses, since the one thing we know we have to do is talk about those articles before 7 o'clock.
Right.
So I move to approve the agenda as suggested to be amended for order.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion, all in favor?
Well, not just as to order, but also to include the 3 items as recommended by
Yep.
the town administrator.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, good. We have public comment. Susan Tyler said she wants to have a public comment.
I certainly do.
You want to come to the microphone, please?
Hi, Susan Tyler, Western Ave. First off, I have a public health thing I'd like to tell everybody. Make sure you check yourself for skin cancer and use your sunscreen. Hence my hat, and it still didn't help. But my other, I do have a question, and only because I know I might be taking this out of order for you, but I'm not sure how long I'm going to last tonight. Citizens petition, I'm wondering how you decide, you the selectmen decide where that shows up on a warrant.
I think the way it ended up coming into the warrant was 5th, and it was typical of citizens petitions at the tail end of the article. And there are also other articles on, and we know that the item that most people are going to want to be there for is the citizens petition, so that way we'll have a turnout for the whole town meeting.
So even though because I know in a regular town meeting, the citizens petitions always seem to come at the end.
Right.
That's the way it's
And
typically.
whereas this what's happening this month is a special town meeting that was called by the citizens for an article that they had specifically. How did that even, in that case, even get put to the end of the night?
Well,
I'm just curious.
I will tell you that I just went with the same rule as putting the citizens petition at the end. And normally we would meet with moderator, town clerk in a meeting and talk about that order. But this, we just put them in. There was no rhyme or reason other than putting
No
the
rhyme, no
citizen
reason.
Well, I
petition
think,
at the
yeah,
end.
I think there's also a concern that where there are other articles that are going to need a vote, we want to make sure there's a quorum that stays through, and I think that's the way to have a quorum, is to have the article of most interest on. I'm hoping it's going to be a very quick town meeting.
And I
We
will,
all,
there is you can talk to the town clerk, but there is a process if
Yes.
you wanted to move to
yes,
take them out of order.
it's always a
I think we
process.
talked about that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And sunscreen.
Okay. Let's see. We're going to talk now about the fall town meeting warrant articles. And we have 5 articles, and I don't think we need to do our presentations now. We would do those, I guess, at advisory, but we ought to go through, and if we're going to take a vote on these and discuss them, we should do that now. And
We don't need them now.
be ready to have our comments for the advisory hearing. All right, so the first article is to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Chapter 59, Section 5N, which authorizes the Board of Selectmen to establish a program to reduce property tax liability for veterans in exchange for volunteer services. And that's Selectman Durensis' proposal, which the Board of Selectmen voted to put on the ballot, the warrant. So, Paul, I guess, I would turn this over to you in terms of the case for this, and then we can have a discussion here, and then see what we want to do about supporting or waiting until advisory speaks.
I have a formal presentation, but I'll save that for advisory. That's 3 or 4 minutes long, and I don't want to take up that time. Now, it's essentially the same program that was discussed at the last annual town meeting. There has been a slight change in the statute. Before, the proposal was to authorize the veteran or anyone designated by the veteran. And in the meantime, we've discovered that sometimes the veteran is unable to make that designation. And because the experience under the statute is that most times it's the spouse who gets designated, they've now put in the statute specifically a reference to the spouse being eligible to do it if the regular vet can't do it. So there's a slight change in the statute, but it's essentially the same. Another difference is that the state is changing the minimum wage, and the program that we offered the town was to not go with the 1,000 limit per person, but rather the 125 hours per person. So the maximum benefit would be 125 hours times the then prevailing minimum wage. So when we said at the annual town meeting that the total cost of the town would be capped at $5,000, I'm changing that number in the presentation to $6,000 to take into consideration the fact that the state is changing the minimum wage. But the minimum wage is being phased in over a period of years. So the full impact won't be felt immediately. To some extent, the program is being tested in operation in the state, and the whole point of our proposal was to test it here in the town. So we had proposed no more than 5. That's a test because if we get less than 5, then we know that we're pretty much on target. If we get more than 5, then we're being asked that maybe Sherborn should have a bigger program. But in the meantime, we've set the goal at 5. And the question was asked by advisory, how would you pick, if you had more than 5 apply, how would you pick? And the process should be that the selection is made by the veterans agent, who is Doug Brody, based on what they call the extent of sacrifice. In other words, if someone's service was to be a cook in a military base in Texas, and the other applicant was recognized by the President of the United States with a Purple Heart, the extent of the sacrifice is much greater with the Purple Heart winner than with the cook. So the standard is the extent of the sacrifice for the service. There was a suggestion made earlier, I think by the town administrator, that there be a means test. and that's discouraged. First, we have an all-volunteer army that we don't have a means test for having people serve. We want to have an,
Can you talk more into the mic? I think Pat's saying she's having trouble picking you up.
we want to have a military force that includes everyone, the rich and the poor, so we make no distinction when we ask people to serve. And if you apply the sacrifice test, I'm told that a bullet makes no distinction between someone who is relatively well off and someone who is not well off. Again, you look at the extent of the sacrifice. So those would be the answers to the questions that were asked by advisory. The town administrator wanted to, or was questioning the rule of one per household. And there's no problem with that rule. I think that makes sense in a trial program where we're going to try 5 veterans. We don't want to have all those veterans in one household. The idea was to spread that around for a bit. But again, as we see what kind of response we get, if we have a larger number of vets, then we would be asked to expand the program to include as many vets as possible. Again, the way this program works is that someone can essentially volunteer for 125 hours of work for this community, and in return, they get a credit at minimum wage that's applied against the taxes that they owe the town. It's self-limiting in the sense that most people who have reasonable employment opportunities can make much more than the minimum wage in the regular marketplace. This is very similar to the senior tax work-off program, but the difference is this allows people at a younger age to have this opportunity to volunteer for the town. Because they volunteer for the town, they actually have to work. The work is actually beneficial to the town, and it's beneficial to the vet. The theory behind this is that there's nothing more important for self-dignity than employment and a chance to do something useful. Part of the presentation indicates what a hardship experience has shown vets face. They are often chronically unemployed. They are often quite disabled. And the most glaring statistic is that we lose more vets by suicide than we do in combat. 22 vets a day commit suicide. So our national leaders and our state leaders want us to do more for veterans. This is a program in which a lot of care and attention has been spent by the state. It allows us as a community to stand up and help our vets.
Do you have any questions from the board? Or?
No, I just reinforce, I support this. I supported it last time when it was brought forth. I think it's a great way to give back to those who've served us and been out there in harm's way and so forth. The other way I look at it, it's a well-crafted program developed by the state that we're adopting. We're doing it on a limited basis. $6,000 worth of credits available is a rounding error on the budget. And we're to the extent that somebody takes advantage of it, we're going to be getting service that will probably be at a higher level than the minimum wage that they're basically getting for the work being done. So it's a great program. The only thing I would suggest, Paul, and in the presentation, both to advisory as well as the town meeting, that they have their stopwatches going. So to be sure to get to the Sherborn program slides, there's 2 slides in there that really outline the program. And I think for people who have questions about what is this all about, you really cover the ground there in those 2 slides. So I hope you get to those and spend some of the time on that.
Well, I want to add, if the board approves, where it says proposed Sherborn program, I want to add the notion that to the extent that there are more applicants than slots, it will be determined on the basis of the sacrifice.
As determined by the veterans agent.
Yes.
And is that a standard from the state program, Paul?
It's not in the law.
But you've gotten that from some
Yes.
official source? Semi-official source?
Yes.
Okay, you didn't make it up
No.
on the car on the way over?
So it's probably best practice, Paul, would you say, in that situation of
Yes.
more
I
applicants
mean,
than
the
slots?
exact example that was used with me was, if you have 5 slots and you have 6 Purple Hearts applying for it,
Mhm.
how would you choose between those 6 Purple Hearts? I don't know if you all know what a Purple Heart is, but that's when you're injured. So the analogy was if you got your Purple Heart because of your leg, but another guy got it because of a bullet in his head.
So
You
I
pick the
concur
guy
with
with
that
the bullet
approach. Yep.
in his head.
And this would be the veterans agent's call in any case?
That's right.
Okay, all right.
So I move to support this article.
Okay, and I would support it too. I know the advisory committee has a lot of questions, and I'm supporting this contingent on the ability to answer all these questions, which I think Paul can do, and I have seen the presentation and understand that those questions have been answered in a way that it wasn't possible to do for Springtown meetings, so I'll support it also. So should we take a formal vote on that one?
So moved.
Okay, so that's 3-0. Let's go on to Article 2, which is to see if the town will vote under General Laws, Chapter 32B, Section 20, pursuant to which the town has established an other post-employment benefits liability trust fund, OPEB trust fund, to designate the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund Board of Trustees to serve as custodian of the town's OPEB trust fund, and that the town treasurer be authorized to execute and deliver a custodian and investment agreement with the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund to sign the checks and wire OPEB trust funds to the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund or to the Pension Reserves Investment Trust, or as it may otherwise be directed by the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund, and to make withdrawals and investments and enter into such agreements and deliver such certificates and other documents as the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund or the Pension Reserves Investment Management Board may direct, or take any other action related thereto. And that's an article sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. I think David Williams has a short explanation of this.
Yes. Basically, the town approved an OPEB trust fund back in 2011. At the 2014 annual town meeting, about $300,000 was designated to go into a trust fund. And my logic in placing the funds at this state retirement system is that our retirement funds are sitting in the pension reserves. So it makes sense to have our funds for OPEB, which is another long-term commitment, sitting in the same place. The funds get put there. They can't be pulled out unless there's another town meeting vote to pull the funds out. And basically what you're doing is authorizing the treasurer and naming the state retirement, the Pension Reserves Board as the holder and custodian of those funds. So they'll take care of the investments. And we had our executive director from Middlesex Retirement in several months ago. He spoke very highly of PRIT and PRIM, the Investment Management Board. And they just have a very good reputation. They have $60 billion in assets. They have a good return. They have a record of meeting their their projected goals each year on returns, and according to council, this is the housekeeping article that takes care of it so that we can place the funds there.
And following up on what Peter asked, the last one, is this a best practice? Is this what other municipalities are doing with their funds?
Well, not every municipality, but I have a list of 29 municipalities locally. But yeah, there's a list of 29 current, and then there are probably 50 other considering.
And an alternative would be for the treasurer to manage the funds directly and move things around, right?
Right, right.
So this is putting it in the hands, the good hands of the PRIT, as they call it.
Right, and
which is where our pension funds.
right, and as the interim treasurer, I know that the town is going to continue to put funds there. You could be talking in a couple of years, millions of dollars. So it is a long-term commitment, just like retirement, and it's not something that you want to easily be moving around without everybody knowing that those funds are moving.
Now, who was the gentleman that came out and talked to us about the pension plan?
It was the executive director, and I just forgot his
Okay,
name.
but he came out, he gave a great presentation. We learned a lot that evening.
Tom Gibson.
Yeah, Tom Gibson, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion on the board?
Just note that I'm going to abstain on this vote because I'm an attorney for the Pension Reserves Investment Trust.
Okay. Does that change any of your thoughts on this?
We'll have the inside scoop. No, it doesn't.
Do we have a motion then?
I so move to support this.
Okay. And I'll second that, and I think it's good, prudent money management. It's recommended by our interim treasurer, and it's fulfills the direction that the town was headed when it appropriated these funds. Okay. Okay. Article 3 is to see if the town will vote to make the office of treasurer an appointed office to be filled by appointment of the Board of Selectmen in accordance with General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 1B, upon acceptance by the voter at an annual town election, and to amend the Personnel Administration Plan Appendix A to include the position of treasurer as an exempt position under Job Classification 3, or take any other action relative thereto. Peter, I know you had some thoughts on this. You wanted to make a presentation or a...
Well, it's not a big presentation,
Discuss
but
it.
I'll have some discussion for advisory just as a lead-in, and basically what I'll talk about is, this has been before us a couple of times. It is best practices. It is recommended, it was recommended to the town by the Department of Revenue in their report, and it was also recommended by the Collins Center in their evaluation of the town structure. It does provide, we think, greater accountability. It helps reduce things slipping through the cracks from where I sit. It's part of the overall strategy of perhaps, it's an opportunity that we have, given that we have, Pete, who served the town very well for so many years, retiring. It's an opportunity to take advantage of this and move in the direction that is municipal best practice. It is supported by the governance task force, so it just makes good sense. And that's the gist of what I'll talk about. I know David has some slides there that he may show up, and he will maybe reiterate some of the things I think I just described. I'm looking at this slide for the first time. But he's got some good org charts that describe where we're at right now and where we think this ought to go. There is a process as defined in the article where if people approve this article, then it will come back actually to the ballot in May for people to vote on. And so one of the logistical challenges will be we'll be having people run for treasurer with the understanding that if the voters approve at the ballot box, the town will be appointing, and we won't have an elected official come out of that, basically.
Yeah. I also wanted to know, I don't know if you mentioned the governance task force had been looking at it. You attended the meeting where they
They
recently
voted 4-0 in favor of it, and one person was absent during the vote.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Anything further from the table, Paul?
Just the Department of Revenue has on its website indication that 74% of the communities in Massachusetts have taken this step. 74%, that means 26, we're in the 26% minority. And the other point I would make is that Sherborn may be small in population, but we have in excess of $20 million that are part of our annual budget. And a lot of money passes through the treasurer's hands. So I think it behooves us to have the very best person from wherever they might be. The problem with elected is that you have to be a resident of the town, so you cannot run for office unless you're a registered voter here in town. That limits the pool to whoever happens to be in the town, whoever is not otherwise employed, whoever is willing to take on this task, and all of those limiting factors that go with this. And while Sherborn has lucked out in the past, I think we need to do long-range planning and see where is this community going to be, not just today and tomorrow, but 10 years from now and 20 years from now. And that really has to be a wider pool of talent for a key, a position that handles so much money.
The other point I would make is there are statutory duties that must be performed by a treasurer, whether elected or appointed. So the tasks have to get done and will get done.
Right, and from a human resources standpoint, it's, you want to commit to hiring the most qualified people for every job in an organization, and this is, if they're elected, it's whatever you get. There's no verification of qualifications or, also, it was brought to my attention about the length of time if there was misuse of funds. The responsibility is to the voters, which takes a long time to correct, and a lot of damage can be done in that position as far as dealing with the town funds.
Okay. We have a motion on this?
I move to support this article.
Sorry.
Further discussion?
Just one.
Yeah.
It isn't that we couldn't find a qualified person in the town. The qualified person in town can apply for the position as an appointed position. But if there is a qualified person in the town is still better off having a wider pool so that you can make a choice between 2 or 3 qualified people, if you can find the qualified person in town. So I'm not sure I agree that there's no one qualified in the town.
I didn't say no one was qualified. I said you have an obligation to hire the most qualified
Right.
person. So that person can be in town.
Could be
Yeah.
in town, they
Yeah.
could apply.
Plenty of them.
And this was a recommendation of the studies
By the
that were done in the
Department
town.
of Revenue,
Not a suggestion, but a recommendation.
recommendation, page 12 of the Department of Revenue report, and page 13 of the Collins report. I have them in my bag. I can show them to anybody that's interested.
Okay, so I think we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this? Aye, okay. Okay, it's the town planner, who I think I see in the hall, is here, or
Diane?
or the planning board chair. I think we have a planning board article. Okay,
Well, while they're doing that, why don't we...
let's go on to number 5. What's that?
John Hickley's coming.
John Hickley's coming? Okay. Oh, he's coming right now. Great.
Dave.
Yeah, I fixed it. Yeah.
Let's look. Okay, hey, John, we're kind of time constrained, so we're going to try to get through this and get on to our other stuff. This is Article 4, the article sponsored by the Planning Board to see if the town will vote to amend Section 3.218 of the zoning bylaws by adding the following language to the definition of a restaurant as follows. 18, restaurant, this use is permissive in the Business G district, prohibited in all others. restaurant, or other place for serving food in premises designed for the service and consumption of food and beverages inside a building or on an adjoining patio, subject to the limitations as to hours, manners, and location of such outdoor service, and consumption of any license issued by the selectmen pursuant to Chapter 140 of the general laws, and provided further that in no event is live or mechanical entertainment permitted outside of a building absent a special permit. That it specifically provides for it and takes any other action relative thereto. That's the existing, that's the existing definition? No, that's the amended definition, right?
That's the
Okay. So where it says here, by adding the following language, it's really replacing the following language? Okay, we should make that note. And could you explain what this is about?
Well, this is, this warrant article is proposed to make this, streamline the zoning board permit that they've been issuing for use in a restaurant. So what we started, the first version that you saw was intentionally very general, because it's easier to type things, you can't back them up. So this was what the planning board decided was a good way to address this issue, anticipating that it may very well be made more tight after we've had our hearing, which will be the day before town meeting. The time constraint is why we started with a general version.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions?
Just a comment that by the time we get to town meeting, my own two cents would be, this should be as narrow as possible, because there are abutters, and right now there's maybe one big event a year, and if you simply adopt this language here, there could be one big event every day. And to impose that kind of big change on a abutter seems to me to be going too far too fast. If the purpose of this is simply to streamline the proceeding for one event or two events a year, then you may want to limit this to a nonprofit organization, and like one or two times would be what I would urge.
I anticipate that would happen, we just didn't want to do that before our hearing. I mean, with limited time, we thought, well, we can agree on something general, but I don't disagree with anything you just said. And I wouldn't be surprised we're going to have our meeting in a few minutes, and we'll discuss it more, but our hearing will be the day before town meeting, so, but I agree with what you just said.
It's just when you live in a small community like Sherborn, we'd like to accommodate the abutters to the extent that we can. And we know that there's at least one abutter who's quite vociferous on this.
Right, yeah.
Do
Yeah.
we want to take any action tonight? Do we want to wait until the final, language is ready?
I prefer to wait till the final.
I think I would also.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
That's absolutely.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, we're going to go on to Article 5.
And,
Can I have something to say?
I think because of the time constraints, Elliot, and you're going to get a chance to talk with advisory, I'd rather not. I'd rather just get through
I
this.
can't have anything to say about this?
I don't know that this is a public hearing. This is for the board's consideration of these articles. And you did speak to us at the last meeting. I know you're going to speak to the advisory, and again, we've got a time constraint, so I'd prefer not. I think if you would reserve until advisory, we did not take action on this. We voted to postpone any action on this until after the planning board's hearing, if that's all right.
No, it's not all right.
Article 5 is shall an act passed by the general court in the year 2014 entitled "An Act Increasing the Number of Selectmen in the Town of Sherborn" be accepted, and that's a petition article by Susan Tyler. And Susan, I don't know if you want to say anything, or you want to hold till advisory. You're entitled to present to us if you want.
I wasn't.
You weren't planning to. Okay, I think we kind of get the gist of what this is about.
Well, I think everybody knows what the article
Yes.
is. The question is, what was passed last year at town meeting?
Exactly.
Now, we're just asking, hey, shall we accept what was passed at town meeting and what was accepted by the state?
Okay, so that's the,
No.
just to say it into the microphone, the purpose of this article is for the town to vote on whether to ratify what was passed at last town meeting, which has since been adopted by the legislature. And that's a requirement of the article that was passed at last town meeting, that it come back for another town meeting. Do we have any discussion here on that?
Well, we can certainly discuss. I mean, it's the will of the voters. People voted for it, it passed. Personally, I'm not necessarily in favor of it, not from a personal perspective, but from where I sit, both having sat at that table as well as having sat at this table. I don't believe it's in the best interest of the community, but I fully respect those who do, and I've heard many good reasons why it is they think it's in the best interest of the community. I sent an email to Representative Linsky and Senator Ross before the hearing with the legislature, just sharing some of my views why, and I'd be happy to share those with advisory later. But,
Okay. Paul, do you have any comments?
Well, at the original town meeting, my position was I wasn't opposed to it. I didn't see it being the central issues facing the community, but I wasn't opposed to it. And then, at the state level, when I was asked about it, I maintained the same position that I wasn't opposed to it. So, I'm not opposed to it today. So, I'm consistent.
Consistency is a virtue.
I'm not opposed to it. I'm not, it's there's just so many issues facing this community. It's not, to me, the most pressing of issues that the town should be addressing. But if that's what people want to do, I'm not opposed to it.
And I still am not convinced that this is going to work, but I understand that people in town want to give it a try. I hope it'll work. I mean, there's virtue or value, I guess, in shaking up things sometimes and trying something a little bit different, which I think this would be. One way it's not going to work is if we don't get good people to run for selectmen, and also it's not going to work if we don't get people to run for selectmen who are realistic about what selectmen can and can't do, and how a board of selectmen and a board of selectmen that works with a town administrator can function. And so, I want to think about this a little bit more before I come down on one side of it or the other, but, it's been an educational process to see the town go through this and to hear some of the arguments for and against, and I have not made up my mind for this town meeting. So we're going to take a vote, or we're not going to take a vote?
It doesn't sound like
Sounds like it would
there's a
be-
vote here to be
Be
taken.
1.5 to 1.5 is what it sounds like.
There isn't anybody
Yeah,
There are two votes here.
I think, recognize.
who's against it. I'm not opposed to it, and you have been for mine. So there's no
We
combination
don't really have
Yeah.
of position.
we're not forced to vote.
I mean, but you're right in terms of, people get the government they want and that they allow to take place. And I think you have to respect that. So, and you have to respect the will of the voters. I think there are plenty of good reasons why this makes sense. I think your point of trying it out, I don't know that it's a trial basis that we're talking about.
Can't be a trial basis.
Right.
Well,
So-
actually, it can be a trial basis, and here's how it could be, although I don't think it will be, which is if we had a charter commission for the town that actually took a systematic look at the government of the town, that had elected representatives, not appointed, and people who were given a charge to look thoroughly at the government and think about what the best form of government is, and we weren't nibbling away at it with article after article, that might be a better system. And I would be in favor of that system. What I struggle with a little bit is the nibbling away, and as Paul put it, that the change in the number of selectmen is a first step, or perhaps by some seen as a panacea. I don't think it can be. I think there are other structural and both structural things we need to change and opportunities to change. And we don't get there by nibbling away. And I think we'd be better off if we had a charter commission type approach. But that's not something that at this point is in play. We can go on now, I think, to the one-day liquor licenses, and we've got maybe 10 minutes to get through those if we can. And David, these are hearings or not?
These are not hearings.
These are not hearings. Okay.
So before we take action, can you just help me out here? I know we've, and it's always the things you never expect that's put a wrench in the works, but here we are presented with something, being asked to approve a liquor license provided to somebody, some catering service, that I guess is doing something at the Sherborn Community Center for a private party function. As a selectman, I don't recall ever having to do this. I recall having to do liquor licenses, one-day liquor licenses for the library crowd, for the, CSA crowd or whatever at Pine Hill. So this is a new one on me, and so it raised some questions. And so here, I see now that we have certificates of insurance, which is good, naming the Sherborn Community Center, not the town, though, and I don't know if that's what we really want, because we have what's called an agreement between the town of Sherborn, but it's not something that the town, there are, in most agreements I'm used to, I'm no attorney, but there's two parties to an agreement. Here, what this looks to be more like an indemnity, and the form specifies amounts that aren't included in the form, so it's incomplete, at least on the first one, which is, 3 days away is the event. The second one does have at least one of the amounts, but not the second amount, so that's,
And it's got the town of Sherborn named as an additional, to the extent. that
and it
needs
has the
anything.
town of Sherborn as the insured, so there's some inconsistency there. So then, while passing through the office to pick up the selectmen's packet yesterday, Diane gave me the agreement that the town has with the Sherborn Community Center Foundation, and I'm hoping that it's an obvious printer error in terms of the text of this thing, because there's typos throughout it. But in any event, you asked me to do something, so I look at stuff. And so one question is, geez, this has a reference to the question was, whose insurance covers whom in all of this? And Diane says, well, they're supposed to pay us for the cost of us insuring them on our big town policy, and it's X dollars. But I don't see where that actually takes place in the agreement. What I see is that they're supposed to have a certificate of insurance with a licensed company acceptable to the lessor, and so with certain amounts specified. I don't know if we have that. And then lo and behold, I look up above and it describes the rent. And the rent, as I always understood it, was $1, okay, a year, but it actually isn't. It's 90%, the greater of $1, or 90% of the operating profits of the Sherborn Community Center, and to be provided with an annual accounting every year. So I think we have to put this on a future agenda just to make sure we understand what's going on here, which is irrelevant to this liquor license, but
But before you go too far, I signed this and was part of the creation of this, and I understand the history of it, and I can explain how and why things are the way they are in here. At another
yeah, future meeting, that would be great.
All right, good.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, events that are dependent upon us, but here we are dealing with somebody I never heard of from somewhere else, asking for us to grant them a liquor license because they're the catering service or the bartending service. And I don't know whether I don't know if the town has a policy about liquor being served in its buildings. I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Well, we rented this building. One of the decisions we made 10, 15 years ago was that although the town owned the building, there were too many reasons, important policy reasons, why the town really couldn't operate this building.
No, I
There
understand
had to
all
be
that.
fundraising and so on. So essentially, we rented it. Because we rented it, it's really not a town building anymore. It's a privately operated building. We happen to own it, but it's leased.
And we have the legal risk if something happens.
Well, they're supposed to indemnify us. There's a whole
Yeah.
indemnification clause here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get all that. I guess it's just,
I think there's a,
since I've been a selectman, there have been 2 liquor-served events that I know of, which are these 2,
Oh, but
unless I'm missing something.
under state law, all events that use
That serve.
liquor are supposed to get a permit from us.
I don't know if that's the case. Is that the
That
case?
is not
David, you
been
got an
the
answer
case.
for this, or?
Yeah. That has not been the case. They've been operating with the understanding, and it's right in their rules, that if there's a cash bar and alcohol is being sold, that it will require a one-day liquor license. They have not been getting one-day liquor license when there is an open bar.
And your
Sorry.
understanding is that's not the correct practice?
Right.
It's illegal, right?
I mean, selling alcohol is the same as, if there's alcohol that somebody sold it.
And I assume that the foundation now understands that.
Yeah, but I've requested a number of documents that are coming in and some data being put together, so we'll have it in time for an agenda item, but it looks like it's needs some enforcement and some
Okay.
indemnification in place.
Okay.
But again, that's all state law.
Understood. And
Which we're in order.
And I assume that the foundation has been, if they were operating under a misassumption it was innocent, and they are
Oh, yeah,
now
definitely.
understanding what's supposed to be done?
Yeah.
It
Well,
needs to be done differently.
the statute actually says sell alcohol, and then they took it literally. Since this has come around, that, we've confirmed and they've confirmed that it's selling alcohol qualifies as serving, consuming, distributing, everything.
Would it be possible to get these requests for these licenses earlier, more in advance of the event? I mean, we're 3 days away from this event.
I would like to think so, but, you got it a day before we did in the office, so, I mean, they should be coming in much
Well, I think maybe
earlier,
what Peter's
at the
saying
time
is,
of the
again,
book.
Let's
something to talk
establish a
about.
policy,
Maybe we
yeah.
need a policy that says if they're not in front of us 2 weeks ahead of time, they don't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
We have a memorial service. I mean, that makes it difficult. You don't have 2 weeks' notice.
Well, there's nothing that would require a liquor service at a memorial service, right? I mean,
but that's too harsh a rule. Remember, the purpose,
it may depend on your beliefs, but
the purpose of having the foundation is because somebody has to maintain this building. And we don't want the taxpayers to maintain this building. So we want the foundation to be able to attract activities that are going to raise money. So it's
Well-
not our job to make it harder for them by saying, you can't have an activity that's going to be 2 weeks out or
Right.
3 months out.
Well,
The more money that they raise, just go to the point about operating profits. That was to protect the town. 9% of the operating profits go to the town if there are operating profits. But the deal was that if they raised money, they were going to use it to maintain and improve the building.
no, I understand.
So
So
they
that's,
should, and they're a nonprofit to begin with. So for a nonprofit to have profits, something is amiss.
well, the technical term is
this
not
was a-
for profit, but I get all that. But they define, profits are defined in here in terms of how it's defined. That's for our future agenda item.
What are
I
we
hope
doing
we don't
about
have
these?
another Leland Farms
well,
issue on our hands, you know?
Well, I think it's good we're going back and looking at things, but I also don't want to have the foundation, some of whom are sitting here, think that we're being critical of their work because they're doing good work.
They're volunteers, they don't get paid.
I get you.
And the end benefit to the community is they maintain the building and preserve for posterity a building that was built in 1858 and which a lot of people really care about. And they do good things.
What are we
They
going
help with our
to do
community.
about these license requests?
Well, I think the license request should be granted. The issue is that our standard practice has been not to condition these on a police detail for weddings, and there's been a request made that there be police details. And I understand the foundation board doesn't see that to work well, and I understand the chief thinks that there is some reason to have it. So I think we ought to go right to the issue. Because we need to approve it with conditions or without conditions, or disapprove it as a whole. But why would you disapprove this right before someone's getting married when they were attracted to use the facility on the basis that they would be able to serve liquor? It's really hard. It's really hard on innocent parties to to say we're not going to grant the liquor license at all.
Well, so from my perspective, Paul, this is the first time I've seen these, okay? And so I don't know what the police involvement is, but I typically support public safety officials in doing their jobs, and it's their authority to what they deem is required. So I know when we've had bike rides through the town, occasionally there are police details required at certain intersections and so on. I'm no judge of that. I defer again to the public safety officials. So I don't know whether, I guess we're missing a police department signature and it says this must be obtained from the police department. So right now we don't have police department approval. Maybe we should ask the chief if he has some thoughts on this within the time allotted. Which is
We have
in
very
March.
little time allotted unless we want to go after the
Yeah.
advisory, so that's
Yeah.
which we can do. I mean, we can certainly do that.
Just one comment on those forms. That's a form that I had pressed for, that before these things came before the board, I wanted to sign off from all the departments, so I knew where all the departments were.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we are the licensing authority for liquor. None of the sign-offs are the licensing authority. They're advisors to the licensing authority. And for years, we had no sign-offs from anybody.
Yeah.
We would just issue these things without talking, without having this kind of documentation and check-off and consultation.
Unless you object, I'm going to suggest we put this off till after advisory. We're running on a hard deadline. We've got
No,
about,
I
we've got
don't
about 5
object.
minutes.
I think, we want to,
And I think this
do
is not a
right by it.
discussion that
Yeah.
we're going to conclude in the next 5 minutes. So with that, I would propose that we continue in session for the advisory hearing and also inform the public that we would continue in session after the advisory hearing to conclude our business for tonight. Is that?
and you'll
does that
cover
work?
the rest of these items?
I think
and
we've got to
whatever
cover the
else
rest.
we get,
Yeah,
some
whatever we've got.
appointments, yeah.
Yep. And hopefully we won't be here in 1 in the
Till
morning.
midnight. Yeah.
Okay, so Pat, you asked me to give you the high sign, so that's the high sign, okay?
So we have a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, might you consider signing the two documents that will take more than
Which two documents are we talking about?
the November election warrants and...
Okay. Good point. Can we, let's do that. Unless somebody has an objection, let's vote on the November election warrant, and what was the other thing we need to sign here?
The proclamation.
Oh, yes, of course, right.
So I move that the town of Sherborn have an election on the 4th day of November
And that
to
will let our town clerk
elect a senator, a
sleep
governor,
comfortably.
attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, auditor, representative in Congress, a governor's counselor, a senator in general court, a representative in general court, district attorney, a registrar of probate, and to present to the voters 4 ballot questions.
And these are all the state questions, Paul, and the state, this is the same ballot that everybody in Middlesex County effectively is getting, or similar.
They will if we
Ballot.
approve this.
Okay.
We'll all have the same ballot.
So you've moved, I'll second, but for discussion, I'll second, but here, I'm asked to sign something. I got it 5 minutes before the meeting, so I haven't read it, so I don't know whether there are typos, except I see one on the very first line, so I don't take any responsibility for the typos that may be residing in this when I sign off on it.
Okay. Do we know where this came from? Was this something that
Comes from the state.
the state prints up? Okay.
What happens if you vote no?
No elections.
There you go.
It'll end up in court.
Okay, so we've got a,
You got to
we've
move and
we've
second.
moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so we can sign the official one. And Paul, would you read Nancy Lavash's proclamation?
Great. Town of Sherborn. Whereas Nancy Lavash grew up in Sherborn, resided here as an adult from 1966 to 2002, and has been a role model of dedication to community and to citizen volunteerism. Whereas Nancy Lavash served the town in many volunteer capacities, including the Cemetery Commission from 1981 to 1995, needs of Sherborn elderly, Committee, 1978 to 1979. Bicentennial Constitution Committee from 1987 to 1988. Committee to Study Elderly Housing Revenue Allocation, 1994 to 1996. Whereas Nancy Lavash, as a member of Reach Out under the Board of Health for Dover and Sherborn, conducted a study on the establishment of a Sherborn Council on Aging, was appointed as an advisor to that council, and served faithfully on the inaugural board from 1978 to 1981. Whereas Nancy Lavash was instrumental in establishing the Woodhaven Housing for Elders in town, served with vision and determination as chair of the Elderly Housing Committee and self-appointed clerk of the works. Whereas Nancy Lavash began as a poll worker in 1974 and as a town meeting worker in 1975, and later served as a warden for many years, serving as the registrar of voters from 1998 to 2000, and on a regular basis from 1985 to 2011 in the office of the Sherborn Town Clerk, with humor, accuracy, and grit in pursuit of citizen services. Whereas Nancy Lavash served on the Sherborn Community Center Foundation Board of Directors from its early beginnings, serving most notably as building chairman and president, and in recognition of her countless hours of service and outstanding performance in advancing the work of the foundation, was honored with the title of Director Emeritus. Whereas Nancy Lavash was active in politics at the local and state level, serving on the Democratic Committee for the Town of Sherborn and Democratic State Committee, and working for numerous Democratic Party candidates. Whereas Nancy Lavash was active in the Sherborn Cub Scouts, the Dover Sherborn Football Boosters, and the Sherborn 4th of July Committee, and actively supported many other organizations. Whereas Nancy Lavash actively attended countless Town of Sherborn board and committee meetings, and with her institutional memory served as a repository of knowledge and freely shared her opinions. Therefore, we, the selectmen of the Town of Sherborn, on behalf of all its citizens, and with the deepest respect and gratitude, extend our sincere appreciation to Nancy A. Lavash for her dedication and commitment to this community, and for the inspirational legacy she has left to serve generations to come.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? All right, great. And Nancy does not deserve to be rushed through, given all the time she gave to the town, but I'm glad at least we were able to get through that this evening. And to honor Nancy.
I didn't sign that.
Okay. So Mary, I don't know if you heard, we are still in session, but we were adjourning until we just had to, until we were just asked to do the proclamation. We're waiting for advisory to start. All right, Pat, thanks very much. So we are still in session, and the advisory committee hearing has now concluded, and we're back to business here. One of the things that we did not do beforehand, and which our town administrator reminded us we should do now, so this person can get home, is to make an appointment of our new building commissioner. David, you want to?
Yep. Actually, the appointment is of the new building commissioner being appointed by the Board of Selectmen to the local emergency planning committee.
Perfect.
So that's run by the fire chief, police chief, and all of us involved in public safety, and now it will include the new building commissioner. So it was an opportune time to introduce the new building commissioner, who started less than 2 weeks ago.
And just saw 2.5 hours of our government in action.
And wanted to stay and witness government in action. And it's Christopher Noonan, and he is coming to us from a department in Wellesley. And we had a good hiring process. It went well after Walter had ended at the end of August, end of July, I guess. And the hiring process went well. We had an ample number of applicants to choose from. They were all very qualified, but
David, just because there's a lot of discussion about town administrator and selectmen roles and things like that, could you explain what the process was that you went through for hiring a building commissioner?
right. So we had advertised for a building commissioner in a couple of publications and posted it and got the word out. Walter got the word out in his association that there was going to be a vacancy. We accepted applicants. We received, it was like 8 to 10 applications. I then weeded those down with a written screening type, not a test, but a questionnaire, and whittled it down to just 2 finalists, and then interviewed both of those people, and we came up with Chris being the best fit for Sherborn. And that process was the first hiring under the town administrator in accordance with the new bylaw changes that were put into effect. And despite the criticisms that I'd heard earlier about the Board of Selectmen's involvement, I conveyed it to the governance committee that you guys stayed out of this whole process. You respected the town administrator's authority in going through the process, and we hired a great candidate, and now I'm bringing him in to introduce you guys and get him appointed to the local emergency planning committee. So I want to introduce him, and if you wanted to say a few words, it's Christopher Noonan, and he is Sherborn's new building commissioner.
Thank you for welcoming me. I'm way past my bedtime. And also, I'm used to this. Actually, I was the youngest town moderator in Mendon, the town I grew up in, at 21 years of age. The first year, 2.5 was in place, so it was a pretty volatile. We have a shared school system with the town of Upton. In fact, Mendon and Upton frequently look towards Sherborn and Dover as sort of models, everything from...
Do you want to move to Sherborn and run for selectman? I hear there's going to be extra seats.
No,
open.
actually, you know what? It's really effective in this position and in others to actually be an outsider, because you can be even-handed and judicious in the way you see things. And if someone doesn't feel you're doing it, the justice system has another alternative for that. So, no, but thank you, though.
Thank you.
So with that,
And thank you for staying late. I wish we'd known we were keeping you late.
No, we had checked in, and he
Okay,
wanted
good.
to stay and
perfect.
see things.
what I was curious is, we used to privately, at a company, we used to do work in town. It's interesting. In many ways, your dynamics are very similar. But in many ways, of course, everything has a uniqueness, and so that's what I needed to see tonight. And so I got a very good flavor, actually. And you operate at what I would call a very high caliber, and so that's also interesting as well.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you. And good night.
Thanks very much.
Well, could I just
Do you have a
add
motion?
my comment
Sorry.
that I welcome you to the town of Sherborn, and we look forward to a long and excellent relationship with you. And the town administrator did brief us on the process, and we are very pleased with how the town administrator handled the process. It was all, from our point of view, very professionally done, and the result is a good one. So
Glad to
welcome
join
to
the
the
team.
town.
Thank you. That's great. So we have a motion to appoint Christopher Noonan, Building Commissioner, to the Local Emergency Planning Commission?
So moved.
Who's second?
Second.
Okay.
For an
David?
indefinite term.
For an indefinite term, okay, that's a clarification on that. All in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Now, good night. Thanks.
Good night. Okay, so now back to our regularly scheduled agenda, and what do we get through here, David? Let's
The
see.
first,
I think we were up to,
if
we
you
were up
go,
to consideration of liquor licenses, weren't we?
well, if you go in order from the top down, we would still have to consider or approve that MPO delegate.
Gotcha, okay.
Basically, last time we brought this up, we were asked to go out and seek Gino's opinions on if the person he thought was doing a good job, and that's what, we have an email from Gino saying that this person was very effective in this role and does support him being reelected to this position, and it's Dennis Crowley from Medway to be on this, the SWAP sub-regional committee.
Yes, so our planning director says he would highly recommend nominating him for re-election, and points out that he was instrumental in obtaining a $30,000 to $40,000 swap area transit study. So this is a selectman in Medway who is asked to be reappointed to that sub-region committee for the Metropolitan Planning Organization,
Right, and this has to be filed by October 3rd.
which
so-
is this Friday, I believe.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so do we have any discussion on the board?
Dennis Crowley is a good guy. I move to
Nominate.
approve or nominate.
I guess we're endorsing. Isn't that what we're being asked to do, is endorsing
No, I think we're
as
one of
the candidate?
nominees.
We're nominating him. We have a nominating form here that I'm supposed to sign if we vote to nominate him.
I see you've
All
already
right.
signed it, so.
Well, that was signed with my left hand. I'm going to sign it again with my right hand. So, do we have a motion to approve?
So,
Okay, second?
Second.
That all in favor? Aye, okay, great.
Now, your next item of business would be the consideration of one-day liquor licenses. There were 2 licenses in front of you, one from Helping Hands Catering and Staffing for an event at the Sherborn Community Center, and the other one was At Your Service Bartending, also an event at Sherborn Community Center. And you'd probably need to vote separately on those and sign
Okay,
those.
and we did have a discussion out in the hall with some of the folks from the Sherborn Community Center Foundation, so I think there's still a bunch of open questions about this, and I don't know if anybody wanted to address that, the issue about whether these licenses are needed, or why they've applied for a license. Is that something you want to address, or are you just asking us to approve these licenses?
The community center had forwarded the licenses over as needing.
Okay, I
It's
got
a
the
one-day
impression things were in
pouring
flux.
but I think they want to approve without certain conditions.
Well, hang on a second,
I think that there was this change of rules applied.
could you just go up to the mic, please? Here, wherever. Depends if you're going to sing or
Yeah, come
talk.
over here.
Chair,
There was a change in policy, and to your point, Mr. Caruso, why you haven't seen many, is that when there's a caterer involved, the caterer carries the license, the beverage and the pouring license.
So that was the question. So are you telling us now you don't need this license because Pauline Bowes Catering and Staffing Services carries a license so that Sherborn does not legally license
Those
this
have been-
catering?
Those, from what our understanding, are the new law from the ABCC, yes.
Okay, so we're getting all kinds of different information
Yeah,
here.
that's not how
So
I understand, but.
if it's a situation where the Sherborn Community Center Foundation members were doing the pouring, then a one-day liquor license would be needed. But if it's a caterer already is certified by the ABCC to pour in any other city, in any other premise than their own, that's not a business entity. So at private functions, at public functions.
I would have to talk to police chief because you talked to the ABC board recently. I don't know if you have a different understanding.
I have a little bit of different understanding. It's actually, we're talking apples and oranges.
Want to go to Mike?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to kind of sort this out because we're being asked to approve a license and then we're being told that maybe they don't need a license and, maybe they shouldn't have a license. So I just want to know what we're supposed to be doing here.
As I mentioned to David by email and in person, I'm certainly not the expert on Chapter
Sure, no,
138.
understood.
So I did reach out to the ABCC with the conditions that were presented to me by the town. And this is news to me about this caterer and having a certain license. I don't have a direct answer for you. It's an answer I can get for you probably tomorrow by contacting the ABCC.
Okay. Well, you guys have events coming up, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you could, I guess, approve it pending,
You're better safe than sorry.
Okay.
There's someone who wants to get married. We certainly don't want to interfere with that wedding ceremony, so why not until we know better. I guess I'm supposed to be.
If you want to wait, I could pull it up. If you want to wait a moment, just give me a second.
But I thought the real issue here was a requirement for police details rather than the niceties
Well,
of
that's
the
not an
license.
open issue if we don't have any licensing need here, Paul. I guess that's my point. So we don't get to that issue, and I'm not even sure if that issue's in front of us, but we don't get to that issue if they don't need a license and they don't ask us for a license.
Well, still, there's a conflict going on that needs to be resolved. How would you propose to resolve it?
Okay, Mr. Williams? Our understanding with the 138, that was more if there wasn't a caterer involved. And this one, this particular one we're referring to is one that does have a caterer involved.
Both of the caterers on these licenses have caterers licenses for,
Yes.
so what you're saying is you're withdrawing
Determinations
these.
here on the fly. I'm
Well,
thrilled about that.
You're withdrawing the
The
application.
reason we were here is to help do what we needed to forward the two events. If you require, for whatever reason, to sign off on this for a one-day liquor license, then that's what we would like.
Well, I don't think it works that way. You applied to us for a one-day liquor license, as I understand it. So if you
And
don't,
technically,
if
they
you're...
haven't, the caterer has.
Well,
I mean, at their request.
somebody did, because we're sitting here with these licenses in front of us, and then, are being also told that they don't need the license. So
No, so, and we can't make legal determinations of what the requirement on the fly.
that's my point. We're not making a
I'm
legal
not
determination. This is
comfortable with that.
up to them to tell us what they need, and, then we can decide what we need to do based on what they need.
So then your one approach is, if in doubt, approve it if it's needed, because we're not going to meet again in timely enough, if it's required, particularly for this October event, October 4th event, if it's required, we're not going to meet again in a timely enough fashion to make that approval.
That's
So you
right.
have to do it this evening if it needs to be done. And we don't know if it needs to be done, except some suggestions are that it does.
Apparently, like I said, I'm just getting this, so, this does say, at least, assuming that they have, this caterer has purchased the alcohol, they maintain liquor liability in these set amounts, and they only permit individuals who have been certified by nationally recognized alcohol, that's the TIPS program.
Correct.
Yeah, so they'd have to be TIPS certified. So what this says is at least 48 hours before any private event, notify the police chief and the local licensing authority that the licensed caterer will be serving alcoholic beverages in the city or town. Provide a copy of the caterer's license to the police chief and the local licensing authority. Provide proof of insurance to the police chief and the local licensing authority. And provide an emergency contact number for the license manager to the police chief and the local licensing authority.
All of which I obviously have not received, and frankly, I wouldn't use the word conflict, Paul. I think there's a serious lack of communication between the community center and the party that has been dealing with these matters for several years, that works in the selectman's office. And that needs to be addressed immediately. There's too much of this, well, we've done this for 20 years, and this is how we've always done it, chief. You just have to roll with the punches. No, not when we're concerned about public safety, and that is my major concern. If we're not going to talk about this particular license tonight, that's fine, or these two particular pouring licenses, that's fine. That document that the group has presented is pretty clear. I haven't received any of this information.
So this is an event that's scheduled for the first one's scheduled for Saturday? And so you would have to get them, you would have to get the chief and the licensing board, which is really us through David, all that information by tomorrow, right? 48 hours in advance? So it says, David?
Yeah, that portion, I mean, there's a lot of information here that,
This way, isn't it safer to give them a one-day pouring license, even if they don't need it, so that,
Well, it might be for the one this weekend, and then we don't have to worry about the one that has the wedding, because they presumably can get that information for the wedding one, which is not for another week. So again, I mean, I believe everything I read on the internet, so if David's telling me that that's true, and he's reading it off the internet, it must be true.
And this application form that
oh, I'm
is,
going to send you a whole bunch of stuff.
so this application form that's sitting in front of us is just a town-generated form, I presume. Is
Yes.
that a fair statement?
Well-
Which asks for the sign-offs, like you were
Well, there's
describing earlier.
there's a statute, Chapter 138, Section 14, that contemplates these kinds of forms.
Well, and if
Well,
I...
the question is, what's missing is,
Well, if I could bring up what was discussed earlier, Mr. Durensis had made a comment that basically marginalized that form. It says that you're the licensing authority, you're the local authority, and my understanding is that now that really doesn't matter what the chief has to say, the chief's input. And if that's the case, the board can certainly say that, and I'll follow the board's lead on that.
there are too many things that,
you
in
can
here.
figure that out right now, right?
No, because it
And
says
even-
something about licensing the caterer in the town that they're in, and then it has some involvement of the Board of Health under certain circumstances.
So then-
Mr. Williams, maybe what makes sense is that we can work on, this together and develop the right policy for us moving forward.
I mean, the problem is, these are state laws, so if you're going to serve alcohol, you have to be serving alcohol in accordance with state laws. If what you need to do that is this one-day license for this weekend's event, I would be prepared to say we should issue that one-day license for I guess it's a birthday party this weekend. And then there's a second event on the 11th of October, which is a wedding, which I understand has been maybe part of the larger discussion here. And it sounds like you have more time in connection with that one, and you've got a statute that you're telling us says that the caterer has what they need as long as you provide the information to the chief and the licensing board. So if you're comfortable with that, we don't need to deal with that license.
Could I ask a question, because this is right on point with the discussion that we've had earlier about the inn, for example. And we've had this beer fest in town for several years, 3 years now, okay? And I guess the question I'm going to pose to the board, and it's a very, very important question as far as I'm concerned, is if I'm asked from the business association, who, by the way, worked directly with me while they planned the beer fest over the last 3 years, okay? They included me in the process and explained what they were going to do, and frankly, they pushed for and supported having detail officers there because of the public safety ramifications. I would like the board to give me some direction now, moving forward, when we're discussing any kind of event, whether it's private property, public property, and it involves serving alcohol. I'd like the board's direction on what you expect from me, because if you expect me to give an opinion, I will do that. But if at the end of the day, the opinion's going to fall on deaf ears because you're the licensing authority, I don't understand why we even have these forms, these town forms. It makes no sense.
Well, that would be a bigger policy question. I don't think that bigger policy discussion is in front of us tonight. What's in front of us tonight is these two specific requests on these forms, which, as Peter points out, is the first time he's seen any of these forms here, and I think it's the first time I've seen any of the forms other than the library event.
I think there was some confusion. Apparently, the community center's paperwork basically said if there was going to be alcohol sold, so that they would need a one-day liquor license. And that's...
It's a lease provision, isn't it? Isn't there something in the lease that says that they have to get, just remember that.
In the rental agreement
Yes.
itself between the customer and the foundation, it states that you have to get a liquor license for any open bar. It says sale, and then it quotes it as open bar. So I guess by definition, whenever someone's serving alcohol to a bunch of
Yeah.
guests, but
Well,
it's
yeah, I
all
mean,
sold.
you can't override the state law with your lease or with any kind of
Right.
town law. So if the
But
state law says that you need a certain kind of license, you need that license.
But I don't know how many times it's actually occurred. If they were going under the belief that they only had to refer somebody over here if they were having a cash bar. I don't know how many times there's been a cash bar in the past 2 years that
Well, they
would
might, I
necessitate.
don't know.
So you may not have seen one for a long
Since
time.
I've been a selectman.
Yeah.
That I recall, not that I remember everything.
Right.
So has your practice in the past been when you've got a catered event that you just trust the caterer to have the license and you haven't had to worry about it? Is that?
The way the foundation operates is there's two people who act as consultants
Yeah.
for private events. They're 1099s. And their responsibility is to go out and work with caterers and get proof of insurance.
And so do you have that in this case with these two?
I'll have to check.
Okay.
They were
And
supposed
and
to
they
have
would
gotten.
presumably always would check about licensing of the caterer too and all that?
Those caterers were always approved. There's an approved list.
Already approved by,
The ABCC.
that's what I'm asking, yeah.
Well, we'll have to double check.
So you know they're licensed? Those are.
I'm assuming that's what our consultants have made sure, but that's an assumption.
In this summary, it says that, as always, all licensees must ensure that they are in compliance with the laws. I mean, the burden is on the licensee to make sure that they have complied with all the laws. But this was issued in October 2012, so this isn't like a new change. It's, however,
Yeah, this is really a bad way to do the law, David. It just is.
Well, I'm not an attorney.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, I mean, we can't do it on the fly like this.
I just like playing with the iPhone.
So I mean, the way I'm seeing this is you have a couple of options. I mean, you could ask us to approve these one-day licenses, but we've just heard from a couple different sources that they really don't apply to this context. You could ask your caterer to demonstrate that they've done what they need to do to serve alcohol, and then if they haven't, then they can't serve alcohol, or if they do serve alcohol, they're in violation of the law, and you're in violation of the law. And, you know, I guess I would urge you, particularly on the event for this weekend, that would mean you'd want to get that paperwork right in to the chief and to David, or make sure the caterer does, like, you know, tomorrow morning. And I don't know what the other solution would be here. Maybe somebody else has an idea.
Well, unless you're doing a conditional license for laws.
What would the
Very
conditional
specific conditions. I don't know. I think one is you got to get the sign off by the chief. Absent that, how do we approve this license without that sign off on the town's form that we're supposed to be approving?
Well, that is apparently a policy that some Board of Selectmen in the past adopted. I think Paul said he was around when that form was adopted, and at the time it must have been that the chief needed to sign off on the license. Was that the genesis of that?
But we also heard, the quick law on the fly there, the chief is involved, and the licensing authority is involved in terms of at least the.
Well, that's the
information.
caterer, that's the
We're gonna
caterer
get-
license. This is a different kind of license.
Yeah.
This is a one-day pour license, and this one-day pour license under Section 14 is just up to the licensing authority. If the licensing authority in turn says, yeah, we're not going to issue a permit unless you've got fire and police sign-off, and police and fire can put whatever conditions on it they want to, if that's the town's policy, then that's the policy. I'm not aware of any policy. I don't know if there's a policy on this. Paul has been around longer than me on this stuff.
They're advisors to the board.
Okay?
We used to not have any sign-offs, and then, I think during one of the times that I was chairman, I said, I would like to hear the input from all these departments before we make a decision. So I asked that they be circulated, and we get the input from all affected departments, so we know what the total picture was before we acted. But even so, there were times we've acted without signatures. We've had the times people have been out of town, couldn't get everything.
Which I think adds to the problem. We either need to be fair and consistent or not. I mean, I don't know how to even answer to that.
But it's clear that no department has a veto over anything. They're all advisors. Chief is an advisor to the board. And
I don't know that I ever used the word veto, Paul, frankly. I was concerned because of a past event that was held at the community center that impacted an abutter.
not on a butter.
Okay, a few properties away from the community center.
But the bigger issue, the one that I think the Community Center Foundation needs to address, is that their role here in the town has been to raise money and to fund renovations and maintenance of the building. And as part of that, they have ventured out into these weddings and bar mitzvahs and other activities, because that is a way to raise money. And as part of that, they need to be competitive. They need to be able to attract business. And so what we do from the governmental point of view also has to reflect the fact that they need to be able to attract business.
I mean, to that point, the reason we attract those private functions is to help offset the cost for not only the renovation of the building, but to be able to provide the building for a variety and host of all other types of activities at low to no cost to the town and organizations and groups and what we call affiliates of the town, so that that building can be used. In fact, you just heard tonight that the planning meeting was having their meeting. That happened to be at the community center, and they used it for a period of time. It was no charge, but that's one of the reasons that we have this this building. The other reason why we have this building and part of our mission is just not only to provide it to town members for these types of functions, but to also create a home, a place for our community to come to have events, to have activities, to have a place in Sherborn to have a good time. That good time could be Friday night at the movies. That good time is Down in the Red with our high school students performing for our high school audience. That is having a movie night. It's having a dance. It's things for our community together to have some fun in our community, as opposed to having to go someplace else.
Yeah, so there's a few things going on here, I think. One is a big picture issue, which is, I think David and Chief Thompson and somebody from your board should probably get together and figure out what the policy is going forward on different types of events, whatever kind of events you have. Hear what the chief's concerns are, see if there's some way to address those concerns that makes sense for everybody, and then build that into your program. I mean, that would be one suggestion. The second kind of micro issue, I think, is you've got two events, you've got two customers who've paid to have events at your venue, your building, and you're contractually obliged to them, and you also have a caterer who presumably is contractually obliged to you, and I would guess had to commit that they had the right licensing and approvals to do what they're supposed to do at that event. And if that doesn't involve us approving it or the chief approving it, it just involves handing in some pieces of paper, then you ought to hand in those pieces of paper and get that done. If it does involve us approving something and you tell us that, then we have to consider whether we can approve that tonight. And it also sounds like you've got one that's an urgent situation in that it's 3 days away, and another one that you got a little more time to figure out maybe. But I don't think we're meeting before the wedding event either, so.
Those are our concerns.
Okay.
But just to add to that, as I understand it, the bride in one of these events has essentially been told she's going to have to pay $453 for a police detail
Well, I mean, I don't know that we can,
that she didn't bargain for.
but that's not our issue, Paul, is it?
Well, I think it is our issue.
That hasn't been presented to us as a condition of this license. I mean, I'm hearing it
That's
from you
true.
for the first time.
That's right. If these events can occur without that condition, then, right, it's not before us. But I understood from the board that they felt that they were being ordered by the town to do this, and we are the town and we're the landlord there.
Yeah, we are the landlord, but that doesn't make us the landlord tonight. Tonight, I think we're the licensing authority.
And the licensing authority.
But that does bring a point in terms of the detail with the signing off or not signing off on documents you have there, whether we have the ABC going through that October 2012. What is the issue? What would be the requirement for having a detail at either one of these events?
That's what I thought you should address in a longer, bigger conversation, that gets you straightened out as far as whatever policy it is that the chief and David and you are able to work out.
But we still have these
That's
two,
my
we have the
suggestion.
two short-term ones that we need to,
You do have two short-term events.
and one is this.
Apparently haven't been able to work it out. That's why I said there was a conflict.
I hadn't heard anything about the event this weekend, as that being an issue.
I wasn't even aware of the event this weekend until today.
Okay, so is that an issue from the standpoint of you think it's a public safety danger?
I don't have any of this documentation that is required, so I don't...
Well, under the catering license, you don't have any of that information. So if
Correct.
they're going to rely on the catering license, you can't really say anything.
I'm
If
not-
they're going to rely on this one-day license, though, Chief?
I'm not familiar with what it is. Literally, Mr. Giammo, I just learned about this today, so
So
I'd like to
nobody
learn more
came to
about
you
it.
for sign-off on these forms or anything?
No one's called me, no one's asked me to sign any forms on this.
On this one for
Correct.
this weekend? So, did that one slip through the cracks? I don't know.
Like I said, there is some serious miscommunication.
Okay, but I mean, we have real people in a problem too, so I'm trying to do both things. I'm not trying to step on your toes
No,
in
no,
terms of your
with all
concerns,
due
but
respect
I
to the
think we
board,
wanna-
with all due respect to the board, I've communicated with the bride about this, and I've tried to work with her based on some of the very specific concerns she shared.
Yeah, I'm talking about the other event, the event this coming Saturday, which you don't know anything about.
Can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we're a volunteer board, and as I stated, we've hired the 1099s. We're relying on them to deal with all the proper arrangements between the caterer and the customer. So,
I get that,
I'm not
but if
saying,
that
but
didn't
I'm
work
not
out
saying,
right-
but that would put us, I'm
It's
not
good for
saying.
you and us and everybody else.
Can I ask,
in
can I ask a
that
point of question, and maybe somebody can clarify this for me? I thought that the committee or commission has a paid events coordinator.
That's what we started.
Okay, okay. So I'm getting a little lost with that end of this issue. Should I be communicating with the events coordinator? Is that what the suggestion is?
My suggestion is that you communicate at the board level with this group and
Sure.
and with David at this point, and they can direct their events coordinator on what needs to be done. That would be my suggestion.
I think in going forward, Chief, we would love to have a dialogue and figure out how all this happens so that we understand what your needs.
And I appreciate that, Frank, but in all honesty, I was left out of the loop on this, and there were communications with board members about this without anybody contacting me, other than send an email about concern about your profit margin. And I understand that, and I have nothing against your group. Half of you were my neighbors. This isn't a personal thing. This is a very professional thing for me. I'm concerned about the safety and well-being of the town, period. That's all.
But we are concerned about
So,
it.
Neil, you've got a thought, maybe you look like you got the solution.
I don't have all the solutions, but I just want to make a comment. So you have the short-term issue, and I appreciate that. When it comes to the long-term issue here, I've heard tonight that we really are focused and we want to be super competitive. So I want to remind people, this is about liquor licenses only. This isn't about popcorn night or movie night at the community center, point number one. Point number two just becomes, the town has liability here. So moving forward, and not that we're going to solve this tonight, there has to be a conversation. The town has to be aware of the liability they face since they ultimately own this building. So if we're not careful, we move forward, we have guidance, and they can have an alcohol license, and we don't have some preview or feedback from public safety, you could have situations where someone could get hurt, and then the town ultimately could get sued, in addition to the community center. So I think it's really important moving forward that, again, there be that opportunity, right, and that there be some guidance, because having been in that situation before, you need to be very consistent in the way you approach these types of things. So I think there has to be ongoing conversation, and just recommend that although it's appealing to say we want to be super competitive, I would say to you, yes, we want to be competitive, but we also want to manage the risk that the town has as part of this process of ensuring we've taken the appropriate steps.
And to Neil's point, David, and correct me if I'm wrong, this matter was brought to the attention of the town council.
We brought it to, I mean, we've been working on this week. We brought it to town council and we brought it to our insurance carrier. The fact is that it's a town-owned building, And the only thing you can do is put as many things in place to mitigate the risk. And those, I don't feel those things are in place right now. And, you know, we have work to do on that. But,
From the standpoint of insurance and so forth.
yeah, as long as it's a town-owned building, you're just going to have to put enough things in to reduce the town's risk, like community center gives us an insurance certificate, names us as additional insured. The vendor is required to give them a certificate, naming them as additional insured, along with the town as additional insured. Probably some sort of signing release of liability or something on the application where they understand that they're responsible for this, they may go to court for this, they will defend the town, blah, blah, blah. And just put as many things in place to reduce the risk of the town, but you're not going to get town council or the insurance carrier to say that there's no risk, that enough things can be put in place that there is no risk for serving alcohol.
I didn't hear Neil to say no risk. I think what he was talking about was having policies that
Mitigate the risk.
that mitigate the risk. I mean, you know, for example, there's a certificate of insurance on this October 4th event, but it names the Sherborn Community Center as the additional insured. It doesn't name the town of Sherborn as the additional insured, even though the lease, I think, says the town of Sherborn's supposed to be on those. There's no dollar amount filled in on this form that I presume the caterer signed, where it says commercial general liability is required in the amount of, and there's just a dollar sign. And it doesn't say anything, and it says CSL combined with the town of Sherborn added as an additional insured. But like I said, they didn't add the town of Sherborn as an additional insured. This is the Helping Hands one.
Yeah, so it's pretty sloppy. I mean, that's what I raised before, and, you know, we have a lease agreement that, you know, I think we got to have a discussion. So I hope we get this on a future agenda, and that we've done our homework to figure out what is the agreement that Paul signed way back when, and what do we need to do to be sure that we're covered, both from liability issues that are clearly not well covered in the piece of paper I'm looking at tonight, as well as to make sure we're complying with the agreement as in best interest of all parties involved, and at the same time support their efforts. We understand what you're trying to do. Nobody wants to get in the way of, you know, trying to further your coffers for maintaining, building the building, you know, repairing the building, as well as having these events. I mean, you got great stuff going there. So we want to keep that going. But we have to, but there's a lot of things that just don't, they aren't not very clear from what I'm looking at in front of me tonight to have to do something. So I hope in a future meeting we can deal with it. For tonight, I think we got to do a belt and suspenders type of thing, which is, one, approve this license with some condition that all the stuff that you guys were looking at from this October 2012 law still come in from the vendor here that's providing the catering.
So we
In
approve a
both
one-day
cases.
license subject to them having
Yeah.
the other kind of
you know,
license?
Yes. I mean, I don't know, it's belt suspenders.
That's an additional insured, that should be cleaned up as well.
Yes.
Adding that the town is an additional, naming the town as
Yeah,
an
yeah.
additional insured
Yeah, absolutely.
also makes sense.
That doesn't work for the following reason. I think they need the license from us in case there isn't the other license. If they have the other license, they don't need this. So
That's
this- But by
If they have the other
saying,
license and they can get all that information to the chief
right, but the way
and
you
to us
just,
by tomorrow morning,
the way
basically.
you actually said it was that they'll have the one-day license provided that they have the other license. And I'm saying, we want to give them the license because they may not have all the other licenses. That's the whole point of the provisional.
I understand.
Well, yes, but I think I really would like to see that all that other stuff comes in.
Well, you want to see the insurance certificate, right? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I want to see the insurance certificate, but I want to see that the caterer has whatever they need to provide to the police chief as well as the licensing authority by way of
But if
town
they have that,
administrator.
But if they have that, then they don't need our pouring license.
I agree,
Right.
so then it's.
But I just want to protect this event because they're contractually obligated on this event.
We're saying the
So
same thing.
If that doesn't come in, I still want to be able to have this birthday party go forward as, we can address your issue longer term, but I don't,
What would the condition be on the birthday party pour license? That it'd be whatever, the contingent license here that you're talking about, what would the conditions be?
That we be named an additional insured? And I don't see any other condition. It really would be make or break at this point.
Okay. And I think the chief has an idea that if we're having liquor served, maybe you need something else. Frank, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that has to come from the caterer or from us? Our insurance or the caterer's insurance for that insurance?
Both, but I think we should have yours.
Yeah, we can get you one of those.
Because you guys have your own insurance,
Yeah,
and you're also, the building's also on our policy, but you have your own
Yep.
liability and all that kind of stuff. Okay, and you name the town, so somewhere that piece of paper exists, which is great, that's a separate issue.
Okay, fine.
I think
Just
what
wanted
we're
to
talking
clarify.
about is caterers naming the town as additional insured, and also trying to get in what we can. Now, maybe it's not that we withhold this one-day pour license if they don't provide that information, but I would like best efforts to provide that information by the caterer. That's really what I'd like to see. And then the question is, if we give the one-day pour license, whether we do it without police chief buy-in, because that's really, I think.
Well, I haven't heard that he
where we're
hasn't
at.
bought in, he just doesn't know anything about this event.
I'm not prepared to comment on what this
He's
event's
got no knowledge
happening.
on this event.
Well, so if he knew about this event, if he had a chance to look at this event, if we made what we're doing conditional upon the police chief's signature on this.
I have a problem with that because
That's what I
the issue I
wanna get
wanted
to.
to raise before was, I have heard that the police chief wants police presence at every event. And to me, I deal with a lot of police chiefs, and it should be a case-by-case determination. And so, I don't want to have that condition here, because it wasn't part of the deal when this deal was made with these prospective
If we
users.
make it, everybody
Can
more,
can
a
I,
little
can
bit more
I, can I
comfortable.
just interrupt real quick, Frank? I did not ever say that I wanted a detail for every event at the community center. That's not true.
It's fine.
So in this particular situation, the one that's this Saturday is somewhere about a 50-person event for a 70-year-old person within our town that would like to have their birthday party at the Sherborn Community Center. That's the audience, that's the event, so.
Well, how about if we approved that license contingent on a detail, if the chief requires the detail based on the safety of the event? And you know, I assume the community center could cover the detail if they felt they needed to contractually, no?
No, I object to that.
Well, I don't know that the chief's going to require a detail. If he thinks you need a detail for 50, 70-year-olds, maybe we need a detail, I don't know.
I don't think we can impose this burden on the community center that way.
It's a hefty burden, it's a large percentage of any potential cost.
Well, I understand, but we haven't really worked this out yet, so we're trying to get an immediate issue addressed that, you know, that you brought to us. I mean, I don't fault you for it, but
We've gone decades without police presence at 70-year-old events, and if we have 70-year-olds being rioting, and we have the police station down the block. They're not far away. To have a police presence at a 70-year-old birthday party?
Well, you know, it could be a wild event.
Where do you see the?
But when you have police presence close by, I mean, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. I mean, I just don't want to second guess the safety concerns of the police and the fire chiefs in this town.
I don't either, and I don't want to set a policy here because I do think it's something that should be discussed, but I'm not really super concerned about,
No.
you know, the kind of things that you encountered that prompted your concern about the wedding event. I'm not concerned about it with this particular event.
And like I said, I don't know enough about it to.
All right.
So,
Yeah, and I'm not asking you to comment, and I'm not asking you to endorse what we're saying here either,
or veto.
or veto, either one, yeah. So do we have a sort of a game plan here in terms of approving a one-day license with a
One-day license,
certificate?
See if we can get a
Best
certificate of
efforts
insurance
to
for
get
the
all the
town.
other stuff, yeah.
best efforts to get everything else.
I think we have to get a certificate, though, not a best
Yes.
effort. We got to get a certificate so the
Got
town's
to get a
insured.
certificate.
So
Yes,
you
and-
want both parties named in the certificate,
The
correct?
town of Sherborn has to be named in that certificate, absolutely. You've got the community center covered, but you don't have us covered.
Right, but if we just go back to the lease and we're going to just say that we've been operating under the guidelines of the lease, and we didn't understand that, so.
That's
we'll
okay.
do that
I'm not,
going forward.
this is not a retrospective thing, let's just get it done.
Yeah, going forward, no problem.
Yeah, but I mean also for this one, so
Right,
that's the
right,
one
right.
thing.
That's
So
what I
talk to
mean.
your insurance people tomorrow.
And also present all the stuff to the chief. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
he's
that's
saying he
not a
knows
problem.
nothing. Get him involved, work with him.
Well,
That's not a problem.
this is not on this group, okay? There's another underlying issue here, and it's not the appropriate
I don't
place
think
or
we
time
deal
to
with
discuss
any
that.
underlying issues, but I do think David, Chief Thompson, and Frank, or somebody else on that board, or a couple of people on the board, ought to have a sit down and figure out a bigger plan.
Yeah, I've, like I said, I've requested a number of documents from the community center, and I just have a hard time weighing in until I get everything and see what they've been doing so that we can figure out what we should be doing going forward.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
but
So the laws have changed, and it really makes a lot of sense for us to all be on the same page to understand, how we work together going forward, and we'd love to do that.
And we gotta talk to council, and council didn't say that there was a law change, they said.
well, let's get this done, and you guys say you have a caterer's license for the one on the 11th?
Yes.
That's what you told us, right? The caterer, the at-your-service bartending has a license. Well, they're from Woonsocket, Rhode Island, though. They have a Massachusetts license? Do we know if they have a license?
Before we
No,
get
so I
too
think
far,
it'll be the same conditions.
can we do the vote on the one that?
Okay, let's take a vote on that one,
Made
that's
and
fine.
seconded? Yeah. Get that one done, and then let's talk about.
All in favor? Okay, so that's the 4th, and somebody's got to sign that, I guess.
Thank you very much.
You're the chair.
I have to sign it? Do we put conditions on here?
No, but our vote, conditions.
Okay. So David, I guess you have to hold this until you get the insurance certificate.
Insurance certificate and the best efforts for catering compliance.
I'm not being the only one signed off on that.
On the event of,
I think you have to sign some other page.
Oh, this is the wrong one. This one.
Well, let's,
All right, we're signing this one.
but there is this unresolved issue for the 11th,
Sign this one,
where
I'm holding this one.
yeah.
the chief wants a police detail, and the bride and the foundation feel that a police detail is not necessary for that event.
I thought there was agreement that community center was going to be covering the cost of the detail on the party on the 11th? That's what I was told. So if that's not,
We certainly wouldn't want this added expense at the
On the-
11th hour to be added to the cost
The rent.
to the wedding party. It's a little bit of combination of that, and there's also, just a police person present at a wedding.
So it's a $450 cost is what we're talking about, so, right, if I understand not, right? And so then the question is, if the chief of police of the town of Sherborn thinks that this is necessary to protect the safety of the town of Sherborn and its residents for $450, and it's not built into their cost structure and whatever arrangement they've made with the wedding party folks. Part of our decision is, well, either we allow for the, prevent the detail, I guess, or not. And if not, then it's a $450 cost to the town of Sherborn in some fashion. And that cost may be insignificant to the risks that might be associated with the event. I mean, that's the dollars and cents of it, because that's their objection, is dollars and cents. What's all
On that
that?
issue, I think that most weddings in most towns do not have police details unless there are particular circumstances. Like, is this going to be a really large wedding? Is this
So the maximum that the community center could hold are just small weddings. So there's weddings between 100 to 150 people, sometimes smaller than that.
So we've gone decades without police details of weddings like this. So this represents a change of policy with a financial implication to the foundation. And I don't know why the chief required it, because I haven't heard it. But I have heard.
I think he said he heard it. There was an issue with a prior wedding.
That's not true, Paul. I made it very clear, the issue I had.
That some other wedding, some other time period, and there was a dispute whether it was a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 2 weeks ago.
It was the last wedding that I was made aware of where they were serving alcohol at the community center.
What was the date of that wedding?
It was July of 2011, July 4th.
So it's 3 years ago.
And that's the last wedding that I was made aware of at the community center.
And between then and now, there's been no other incidents at all.
Well, you would have been aware, if there was an incident, you would have been aware of the wedding.
Correct.
You wouldn't have been aware of the wedding, but you would have been aware where they came from, because you would have done an investigation. So if there was a problem, you would have found out that there was a wedding.
Possibly.
And so my concern is that I think this is overkill. And because the only justification for it is that something happened 3 years ago. And so here's a bride who entered into a contract with the foundation to have a wedding with certain expenses. And then she's had this charge. She got all agitated. Now having the foundation pick up the charge to have a police officer at a wedding, that's a pretty unusual event. Again, unless it's a big wedding, unless there were traffic, you needed a traffic detail. But this is not about traffic detail. This is about.
I'm sorry, Pat, did you say something?
I don't know, we count on our, town managers and administrators to give us good advice and to protect the town. And we're constantly told that the Board of Selectmen is too into the details of things and micromanages stuff. Constantly told that. So, to me, if what our chief is saying is that there needs to be a police detail because this is a significant public safety issue that's worth $450 to the town of Sherborn to make sure this wedding doesn't get out of hand. I mean, I don't know what else we're doing. I'm counting on his professional skill to tell me that this is something that's worth that cost to the town of Sherborn. He makes budgets for us all the time. He tells us when he needs something for the department. This sounds like it's a budgetary issue. This wedding is a risk to the town of Sherborn, and we need to have a detail to protect the town. That's what I'm hearing.
I don't disagree with you. I usually follow the chief's advice. But what makes this thing different is this is a change of policy. And it harms the town. And I don't see.
But that's the second guessing of the administrator, right?
I don't understand how it harms the town. I don't understand that.
Because we have to pay $450, and then you multiply it by every event, people aren't going to come to the town of Sherborn to have a police officer at their wedding. If you were having a wedding, would you want to have a police officer there?
I'm actually glad you brought that up because Lieutenant Bento actually had a wedding in Millis, and he was required to have a police officer in uniform. And to your point, I actually agreed with the bride when she shared her concern about a uniformed police officer intruding on their wedding. I offered to have the officer come in a suit and tie to fit in with the wedding.
And she didn't accept that.
I'm sorry?
She didn't accept that, and I
Actually,
think most
Paul,
people.
excuse me, Paul. Actually, you're wrong. Her next correspondence was with me was, can I hire a police officer from Millis or Hollistown? So it turned into, is it really the detail? Or is it that they don't quite like the decision that I made?
Well, I don't think we're setting a policy we're not establishing a policy. We have an event for which the chief feels that the details should be there. Like Mike says, you hear me say it all the time, I don't want to second guess, particularly a public safety official, on what they believe is in the best interest of the community. I've paid for a wedding. I have another wedding coming up to deal with. Neither event that I know of had a police detail requirement. I don't know that I would have been smart enough to question it if there was that requirement. Now I am. So I'm just saying, that being said, he's the guy that makes this type of determination. We're talking about one event. Maybe we're talking two events, but I think we're talking one event that we know of. And so who bears the cost is what it boils down to. It's $450.
If I may ask a question then, I would be very appreciative if I could understand on what basis the police chief made the decision that they needed detail for this particular wedding.
I think what the chief was saying is that he had an experience at a past wedding, and this is the first wedding that has been brought to his attention. So whether it's not, it may look like it's a policy change this week, but it was really from 3 years ago. And I think he's saying that it hasn't been brought to him. And the same with me, Mike.
So to that point, that didn't happen at the community center. It wasn't in our building that happened. That's why we have public, officers to help protect us, and the public when something happens. It was the 4th of July. They went out. They did something that was against the law. The police took care of that. That was an issue. I don't think that them going out and lighting off firecrackers was, as a result of the community center. And, I don't know that if a bridal party or a wedding party that occurs on October the 11th, they're going to go out and, shoot off fireworks again, or for that matter, do anything else. One of the comments were made, when alcohol is poured, there's poor decisions made. That's true. That happens all the time. But we have a lot of establishments that still pour alcohol that don't have police in them. But there's still issues that the police have to take care of that happen outside of those establishments. Right. We don't condone. We want to make sure that everybody has a good time and leaves our building safe. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want to have any problems either, which is, I think, is in kind of, lacking of a better word, simpatico with the public service officers. We're in the same boat. We want the same thing to happen. We want everybody to have a good time and have a good evening that they'll remember for the rest of their life for because of a positive reason.
Well, I think when the chief talked to me earlier in the week, and and it was occurring to me that this was a public building, I said, yeah, it's your call, chief. That's I would support him in that, and I don't think we're going to change his mind on that. And when I started looking around, I think the insurance things have been lax, and it causes concern for me. And I'm not going to advise the board that there's enough insurance in place or everything's been checked out. I can't do that. So you've got the police chief saying he's requiring a detail. I'm saying I'm not comfortable with the insurance, that I need more time to look at it, and maybe we can get stuff in place by the time that the wedding comes up.
Well, I don't think we can cancel a wedding because of the insurance. I mean,
No.
Somebody's been planning for months. You just don't suddenly, maybe in the movies you do, but you just don't suddenly decide you're going to get married.
Well,
And
Paul, it's
No,
not
but
it's
I
not
don't
us
have-
canceling it. They have a caterer, they have professional people who are supposed to satisfy the requirements, and if that hasn't happened, then...
Right, so I can't I can't assure the chief that we have enough protection. Well, he can't assure us that there's going to be enough
There's a difference
protection.
between insurance and the chief. I mean, I deal with this stuff for 40 years. I've never seen this kind of strictness on a wedding, just an ordinary wedding. This is very different from pretty much
clarify the insurance?
majority of chiefs in Massachusetts. So there's something else going on here, and it's got to be more than an event that happened 3 years ago.
No,
So if this-
I really take offense to that, Paul. I've made it very clear, 100% of the time since I've been chief, that they had a wedding event that I was aware of, there was an incident. And to your point, I also communicate with several police chiefs, and I came from Framingham, and when we had issues where there was alcohol served, whether it was a private business or if it was a public-type function, when there was an incident that was of concern to public safety, the licensing authority usually applies, to use your word, more strict requirements.
So this is what I'm going to suggest, which is, it sounds like we have 2 votes to approve this license with a condition that there be a paid police detail. If the community center folks can satisfy the part of the statute that deals with catering companies that have insurance and all that other stuff, then you don't have a license with a condition, and you can do what you want. If you need this license, I think it has that condition in it. And then going forward, if David and Chief Thompson and Frank or somebody else can get together and talk about what the policy should be. I mean, kind of like Paul, it wouldn't have occurred to me that you need a police detail at a wedding, but I'm being told by 2 of our town, our town's leaders, our town's senior staff, and a police chief and a town administrator, that this is a situation where they're not willing to say we're safe without one. So that's fine. If the state's going to say we don't have a role in it because the caterer has a license, that's also fine. I don't, and I don't know if this caterer from Rhode Island can even satisfy that statute, but if they can, they can. That's what I would recommend we do, and then we can move
I think
on.
it's good.
Okay. I don't know what you think, Paul.
Well, for the record, I'm going to say no, because I don't want to set a precedent. I do want to say clearly that I want to see weddings, and I want to see bar mitzvahs, and I want to see the community centers work well. And so I don't want to see police details there on a regular basis. I want to see it when you have a reason, particular to that group who's renting the facility, not something that happened 3 years ago. That's where I'm coming from. Just want to make a...
This is only about alcohol too, Paul. I mean, remember, if there was no alcohol served, there's no license required. So there can be as many events as you want to have. We're talking about the events that involve alcohol. And from some research that I asked Diane to do that she did, not all towns allow alcohol in their public buildings. I mean, I don't have a problem with the policy of, the Sherborn Inn allowing alcohol. I mean, not Sherborn Inn, Sherborn Community Center allowing alcohol.
We decided that there was a vote here to allow it because we needed to raise money.
Understood. No, I understand that, but I'm just saying it's not an outrageous proposition that you could have a party without alcohol and not need a police detail.
And actually, they've had events where no alcohol was served, where the person renting the community center has hired a detail, ironically.
So that's perfectly fine if they want to, but here, how many wedding receptions?
Of course they don't want to. It's going to cost them money, and we're the ones who are going to assume all the risk. Of course they don't want to hire a police detail, Paul.
How many wedding receptions?
I take a little bit of offense to that because we
I don't mean-
had Driving in the Red, which is high school students performing for high school audience, and we had a detail for that, and we paid for the detail because we didn't want to take any chances. I think that there, could possibly have been a risk that was beyond our control, beyond what we can see. We want to make sure that everybody ends up being safe.
Which is exactly
that's our goal.
Which is exactly my point.
Right.
That's exactly my point.
And, at weddings, you don't see police, so,
That's not true.
Well,
I
I'm sure
disagree.
if you had a wedding of, quite a size, that might be a little different story, but when you have a wedding of about 150 people.
I mean, I don't think we're going to change this policy tonight. I mean, I think we kind of have a...
I think you made a motion.
I made a motion. Did you second it?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion up here? All in favor? Aye. Paul? No? Okay. So 2-1. And I've already signed this license. And you're not going to sign, you're not going to give them a license?
Not with that condition.
Can you guys just reiterate
Okay.
everything?
Where you are is you have a license for the event this Saturday, subject to getting the insurance to cover the town of Sherborn. You have a license for the event on the 11th, subject to a condition of a police detail, and if you figure out another way to satisfy the liquor licensing statutes because your caterer, for example, has a license that doesn't involve us, and you present the proper information to the chief and to the town administrator, then we can't impose a police detail condition on you because there's nothing that we need to do to authorize that. But if you need our license, that condition's on our license.
The other one, the first one also had a condition that the best efforts to get that
The insurance.
information in. No, beyond the insurance.
All the other information.
Get the other information to the chief and the town administrator
Okay.
representing us as licensing authority.
But the
On that
important
last-
part that comes out of this, I think, should be, you guys have to talk.
Yeah.
Just add to, not just to get all those things, but also to work with the chief on this. So,
I think
on that
that's really
first
important
license
that
that
we
we
approve that.
Yes.
Because it's our goal too, we want to have, want to have a
I know, and
safe, but
believe me,
enjoyable.
you know, if I've said anything that sounds like I'm faulting anybody here, I'm really not. This is a problem that everybody was trying to solve, and I think hopefully we at least solved it in some compromised way that everybody gets a little bit of what they need, and the town's protected, which is the most important thing. All right, I guess we're on to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, really appreciate it.
No, you too. It's very late.
The next
Okay.
item would be to consider appointments.
Okay.
We have three committee designees on hold up for the Public Safety Committee. One seat is available for a term of 1 year, expiring 6/15/2015, and we have one applicant, Arthur Fenno, that I believe is going to be a good addition to that.
I move the appointment of Arthur Fenno for a term expiring June 15, 2015.
What was Arthur Fenno's?
His information was included in there.
Excellent.
back here?
He works for the Superior Court, he's a lawyer.
It should be disqualified.
We can't hold it against him.
So he's automatically disqualified. is what you're
It brings
It's
an
good to have a
attorney.
lawyer on
spite of that,
a
he's a
committee.
good guy.
No, that's right. It's Public Safety Committee? Okay.
It brings an attorney present.
All
to
right,
that.
so, and it's for a year, but expiring next June 15th. Okay, so all in favor of that? Aye, 3-0, David?
For Historical Commission, there were 4 applicants that are being put forth. Carol McGarry for a term of 3 years expiring 6/15/2017. Peggy Novak for a term of 3 years expiring 6/15/2017. Eugene Goldfield for a term of 2 years expiring 6/15/2016. And Ron Stefik for a term of 1 year expiring 6/15/2015.
So David, how did this come about? I know we talked about trying to recruit to get people on these committees because they were very understaffed. Did you reach out to these folks, or did some
The
groundswell come up?
The Historical Commission saw that there was a need for
Yeah.
people to serve on the Historic District Commission.
Yeah.
And I think that they talked among themselves to put forth, 3 of those people decided that they would like to be appointed to the Historic District Commission. So that's why there's some duplicate between the 2.
Okay. And just a correction on the spelling of Novak, no C in there, N-O-V-A-K,
Oh, okay.
at least as far as I know. Okay, so we've got
So moved.
4 people on
Second.
each of those. Second. Oh, I guess we got a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Let's
Now
see.
the HCC.
The next one is Historic District Commission. There are 4 applicants. Ron Stefik for a term of 3 years expiring 6/15/2017. Carol McGarry for a term of 3 years expiring 6/15/2017. Peggy Novak for a term of 2 years expiring 6/15/2016. And Diana S. Wheelwright for a term of 2 years expiring 6/15/2015.
Does this, are there statutory requirements for residency and so forth on the Historic District Commission? Did somebody check and make sure they meet those requirements? I think Ron
They had
lives
to
in the
be in the
district.
commission. Yeah, they had to be in the district.
Well, I know a
Yeah.
couple of these people don't live in the district.
Really?
No, I think this,
It's the other one.
you have to have
Oh,
an
you had the
arch-
one,
you have to have an architect, the first guy's an architect, he can live anywhere. Then
I
you,
think he lives in the district.
he also lives in the
I think he
district,
does,
so
yeah,
he might fit,
both of them.
but I don't think everyone has to live in the district.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking you.
I think my recollection was 2 have to do with. the-
Okay.
There is
so
a
we have that.
requirement.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure somebody checked. I'm not asking
Yes.
anybody to redo it, it just
and we'll
touching
double
the
check.
base. Okay.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye, okay.
That's great, we fill in those commissions here.
Well, especially since one of those commissions was down, I think, one or two
Down to
people.
one. Yeah, or something, yeah. That's awesome. Right, great groups.
Okay. Our next meeting is October 15th before the special town meeting.
I will be out of town.
Okay? We'll miss you, Peter. And by the way, it's Peter Crusoe's birthday tonight. So
Yeah.
we all want to wish him happy birthday.
Thank you very much, yes.
Can we sing?
I tell my kids this.
After we've adjourned, Paul, you
Yeah,
can say
yeah, please.
Once the tape's off.
Wait till I've left the building.
There's an accounts payable warrant on the desk.
Yeah, we have to vote on the warrants. We still need to do that.
That that's my payroll warrant that's separated.
I don't hear a motion, do we?
I don't know, did he earn it?
The town
Oh,
administrator.
you do? Okay, second. Okay, all in favor?
The others can be reviewed. We'll leave them down there till Friday.
And that's the one, you'll sign the other ones once we've reviewed them.
Yeah, yeah.
Got the 2 weeks.
And I haven't gone through it today to be able to provide any sort of
I
summary.
understand. Okay. There's no minutes to approve tonight, and let's see, 7 o'clock. We're,
Right on target.
no, we're not. Okay.
Nice.
Do we have a motion to, do we do anything else, David? Is there anything else we need to do before we adjourn this thing?
I did want to have one account receivable held,
Yes, you emailed the town administrator that, I think?
so that's being done.
There, from a past invoice that was going through?
The one that had been revised, and he wanted to have that.
Yeah, that's on hold.
It's still on hold.
It's still on hold.
Is there another invoice?
No,
Since then?
no. But if you want to just make it clear now that it's, to make sure that it's pulled out and held for review before it goes.
Yes, that
Yeah.
one, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
If one comes in,
And if a new one comes in, yes.
yeah, we'll make sure that it's pulled out
And
and doesn't
reviewed.
get processed until you.
Okay. Diane, you got anything? No? Okay. We're all set?
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Was everything covered on the agenda?
Yeah, I think so. Second, Paul, or?
Yeah, second.
Okay, good. Further discussion, all in favor? Aye, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Good job.